on the coaching call, we're talking about stuff and doing stuff. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh yeah, I hit 10 million today. I have an add a zero without the hustle framework that I've helped people go from 0 to 6 figures, from 6 to 7, and even go from 6 to 8 figures. We're using the same strategies the whole way through. We got on the phone. I said, hey, what happened? He said, well, I had a $100,000 sale. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I was ready to do my happy dance for him. And he said, Stacey, hold up. He said, this was not a happy dance moment. Start with your why and what you want. If you don't know what you want and what your why is, then you're doing all the things, but they're not leading towards momentum. They're just scattered.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now let's get it started. Hey guys, welcome to the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meek, and I'm going to be your host as usual. And in our studio today, we have Stacey Hylen. How are you today?
Fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely fantastic as well. Thank you so much for asking. And our guest, if I haven't reminded you enough times already, would love it if you would like, subscribe, hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. And without further ado, let's get it started. So Stacey, let's get into this. We're talking about sales. We're talking about AI. We're talking about who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do. So give our audience a little bit of a background on who you are, and let's drive forward from there.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. So I'm a business coach. I've been a business coach for 25 years, since people used to ask me, what sport do you coach? They didn't even know what business coaches were. And in the last 4 years, I've also become a certified AI consultant, which has really integrated great in my business, because what I help people do is help them add a zero in their business without the hustle. I've also worked with a lot of super well-known people in the industry. I was vice president of consulting with Tony Robbins and Chet Holmes for their business mastery brand. And my mission is to give entrepreneurs back to their families. So helping you build a prosperous business, but also have a life that you love.
That's a big deal. I've been an entrepreneur for 30 years, and I will admit that I have crashed out. I've put in the hours, the time, and just had to just lay down on the couch and, talk to people and things that weren't really there. No, I'm just kidding. What drives that passion though? I mean, a lot of people in business that I talk to, it's just like, hey, we need to build revenue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, where does your passion come from?
Well, it comes from a really sad thing, unfortunately, is my dad died when he was 56. And so when that happened, I was 26, and it really made me think of, like, what do I want in my life? And I spent a lot of time like going inward and, praying about it, and really realizing that my dad had died without doing many of the things on his bucket list. He had missed a lot of school, and not school, like school occasions, things that we did in school, trips, things like that. And so he died with a lot of regret. So I think that has really gifted me with the fact that I wanted to do business differently. Like, I wanted to be there for my kids when they got off the school bus, and when they had theater things, or my daughter was a national level gymnast. Like, I wanted to be there, and I didn't want to get to my rocking chair and be regretting all the things I missed. So
Wow.
there was a gift in that.
Wow. Wow. I'm sorry to hear about your father, of course. What a legacy though. You're giving that back, your vision back to, lots and lots of people. Wow. That's complex, but good for
I don't
you.
want to bring a damper on it, but if you think about it, like the ripple effect that's happened from something that was sad, like I had, guys that have been on the Inc. 500, 3 years in a row. They took their first trip to Disney with their kids. They started doing taekwondo with their kids on Fridays. Like the ripple effect from that thing that happened, people being able to be present with their kids, being able to live without regrets. Like that's just so fun for me to be able to see that.
Wow. 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 What great stories. What great stories. And you're working on a book. Are you going to talk about some of the stories in your book?
Yeah, we can if you want.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about your book, because this is like a preview. I know it's not live yet, but
Yeah, it's coming, and it's called Hidden Profits, More Clients and Cash. And the hidden profits are ways to rapidly increase your bottom line profit, increase your revenue that goes direct to the bottom line, because you do it without spending any more on your marketing or advertising. So with the things that are in the book, they had to fit 3 criteria. They had to be fast and easy to implement. They had to be something that you could do in any size business, and they had to be something that were low cost or free. So, you're getting that rapid increase in revenue, low cost or free, and you don't need a team to do it. And now with AI, it makes it even faster. But the way the book came about was from when I was working with Tony Robbins. So I was at the very first business mastery event, and Tony Robbins, like, he coaches people in the audience. At this event, I want to say there were about 500 people in the audience. So it was a very small, intimate event for Tony Robbins. No security staff or anything. And so it was really cool because people got to get coached by him in the audience. And so somebody stood up and they said, Tony, I've tried everything and nothing works. Now, you have to remember this first business mastery was right when the last recession hit. And so people were kind of freaking out because things had changed in the industry very quickly. And so Tony said, well, tell me what you've tried. And the guy said, well, I've tried this and this and this. And Tony said, okay, well, that's like 3 things. That's not everything. So can you imagine telling Tony you've tried everything and you've tried 3 things?
Yeah.
You're like,
Seen him interact with
the
people.
audience is like, oh. And so Tony said, well, you've only tried 3 things. Like you said, you've tried everything. You must have tried a lot of times. And the guy said, well, I tried a few times, but I ran out of, team and money and all of that to implement. And so Tony said, you've said that you've tried everything and you've tried 3 things 3 times. And he said, let me ask you this. He said, have you ever seen somebody that's come to this country and become more successful than you? And he's like, yeah, you see them all the time on like Success Magazine or Forbes or whatever. And he said, what was the difference? Is that the people that came with nothing, they were resourceful, right? So it wasn't a lack of resources, it was a lack of resourcefulness. And so that stuck in my head, and I hope everybody listening or watching thinks about that, is that what can we do to be more resourceful? Because right now with AI, with the internet, with social media, we have so many resources that we didn't have 20, 30 years ago when we started our businesses. I mean, it took $10,000 to build a website back then. And so from that statement of how can I be more resourceful, when my clients from the recession lost financing, lost clients, all of these things were happening, I said, how can we be more resourceful? And that's when we started implementing these hidden profit strategies
Mhm.
that allowed them to do more with less.
Mm, mm. I'd love to hear more about that. I'd love to dig into that a little bit more. I mean, I know, I talk to people all the time, and it's just like, hey, I'm trying to build my business, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how to get clients. Everything has changed. The way that we got business, 5 years ago, 10 years ago is not the way we get business right now. So love to dive into that just a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I've found has been really, really successful is what I call the $700,000 mistake in my book. And so I had a client and he canceled his coaching session on me last minute. And that doesn't usually happen because people have invested a lot of money in coaching. And so when we got on the phone, I said, hey, what happened? He said, well, I had $100,000 sale. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I was ready to do my happy dance for him. And he said, Stacey, hold up. He said, this was not a happy dance moment. And I said, what do you mean it wasn't a happy dance moment? And he said, I had a client that for the last 7 years was spending $100,000 with my competitor. And this was a prior client of his. And so he said, I'm like beside myself that like $700,000 just like has been going to this competitor for all this time. So that's when like ding, 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 like the hidden profits was like, okay, like we need to do this come on back strategy of bringing past clients back in. And I think that's something that everybody's like, how do I get a new client on social media? How do I get a new client? Cold messaging people. Like, look at what you have in your business that you can be resourceful. And that list of past clients is a resource for you. And I had one of the women that was in my Hidden Profits program that she took it, and it was in December. And for her, it was the very worst month of the year for her. She was selling weight loss. So can you imagine trying to sell weight loss in December? Like people want to eat grandma's cookies and go to parties, and like weight loss is like everybody wants to lose weight in December, but nobody wants to do anything about it until January 2nd. So I said to her, I said, I'm not sure that this come on back reactivation strategy is the best thing for you to do right now. And she's like, no, I want to try it. So I was like, all right. She put this strategy together. She had the best month she had ever had in the history of her business by just telling people to come on back and putting a special offer together for them. There's a few things for your audience here to unpack is that number one, you think that your clients know where you are, right? They're like, oh, Rick, he's going to help me. Like, you're thinking, oh, they're just going to come back on their own. But the thing is that if you open your inbox, if you open your phone, if you look on social media, you are bombarded with thousands and thousands of messages per hour. And sometimes I even want to refer somebody. I'm like, what the heck was that person's name? Right? Like, I'm like, oh, what was her name? I want to refer somebody to somebody.
Hmm.
And your clients are feeling the same way about you. And so what we want to do is number one, we want to remind them to make you top of mind awareness. And so even if they don't come back right there at that offer, they're much more likely to come back in the next 6 months. And number two, you also want to give them permission to come back. Because a lot of times, like for example, with my client that sold weight loss, if you do a weight loss program and then you go off and you like fall off the wagon and you gain your weight back. And then you go and you try another weight loss program and you like, there's a lot of emotional upheaval there and negative, emotion around it. So they might be too shy to go back to my client and say, hey, I need some help again because I, you know, fell off the wagon with that. Right. Or they might be shy because they went to someone else. And so what we want to do is say, hey, come on back. We'd love to have you. And I think a lot of business owners aren't giving people permission to come back, even if their clients have gone off and tried other things or tried other products or services.
Wow, I never thought of that. That side of I've talked to people about just going back and getting going after older clients, but never that they're afraid. They're afraid to come back for whatever reason. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. One thing I ran into is just like a whole repositioning. It's like we were off. Say I was offering consulting. I offered consulting for 20 years, and I don't do that work specifically anymore. And then so we offer a different type of work at a higher price point. What happens? You're going back to these older clients, and they're expecting X dollars per hour, but you're charging much more. What happens there? Is that a thing?
Well, it can be a thing, and I think part of it is that you need to re-educate them of, you were here and now you're here,
Yeah.
right? And so there's this like time has stopped between the two of you back here, and they don't see this progression that's happened with you, with your skills, with your results that you've gotten. So I think part of that needs to be a re-education of them, by you to say like, hey, when we worked together, we were working on this. Now I've added like for myself, I've worked with Tony Robbins, I've worked with Chet Holmes, I've worked with like the leaders in the industry, but now I've layered on, I'm a certified AI consultant, right? So now you're having somebody that has the best strategies in the world of business growth plus AI consulting. Like you're going to pay more for that than you just paid back before I was, vice president of consulting with Tony Robbins, right? So that you just need to make that show them that. And I think part of that could be like an email series or sending out some testimonial videos, things like that, so that they're seeing it's not about you and your price point 10 years ago. It's about you and your results, you and your transformation you're going to help them make, and that you have all these skills and resources that are going to help them reach that faster.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. You brought up AI a few times. I mean, I get emails like LinkedIn messages every single day about somebody being an AI coach. What makes you so special?
Well, this is so funny, and it's really like a pet peeve of mine because I've been in coaching for over 25 years. So when I started coaching, people are like, "What sport do you coach?" And I'm like, "No, it's not a sport, but thank you for thinking I could be a coach, some kind of team." But what happens is that I've seen this progression of people in the industry of like, I'm a social media coach. I'm a high tickets closer person. Like, so I've seen this like people just riding this wave of like whatever's popular to sell, right? And so I think what is happening right now is there's a lot of people that are seeing like, okay, AI is the buzzword. I'm going to start selling AI right now. And what's different about me is number one, I was in one of the first 1% of users of ChatGPT. So I was in it like the first month that it opened, and I've been training with the best people in the world on AI. But what I have is like my peanut butter and chocolate is that 25 years of business growth experience and strategy combined with AI. So I don't approach AI like somebody that's just like, oh, just try ChatGPT. No, I have a very specific framework that's based on my 25 years of experience. So you're going to get better results with whatever you're using. And it does, it's industry platform, it doesn't matter which platform you use, the framework works for it.
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on peanut butter and chocolate. Reese's is going through my brain. Let me regroup for a moment.
It's okay.
No,
I'm not a Reese's person. I am the Justin's peanut butter cup person. Okay. So Justin, I don't know if you've ever had Justin's before. I don't know if they're just in the Northeast, but they are peanut butter cups. They're dark chocolate. And you can either get it with the like natural peanut butter or with almond butter. And they are like like if I go to like the airport up in the Northeast, I'm like, oh, those things are so good.
bucket list. I want to dive in a little bit more to AI. I mean, you touched on ChatGPT. You touched on, but you also touched on strategy. You touched on business operations, and I don't know that that's a conversation that we have typically. We learn how to write emails faster, or make proposals faster, et cetera, et cetera. But it sounds like you're going a little bit deeper than that. Is that right?
Yeah, so what I do is usually I start with people with an AI growth assessment. Okay, so they come into my company, we do an AI growth assessment, and we'll see like people don't have their security settings done right. Like we literally start right there because I don't want to train train your AI and you're now sharing all of your genius with the world, right? We want to make sure that the model is not training on your data. So that we start there. We look at, what is it in your business that are opportunities, growth opportunities, and what are things that are holding you back? And then how can we use AI to help you increase your revenue and increase your productivity and freedom? So I'm looking at AI through those lenses, not just like, hey, here's how to write an email better. And so my framework that I have, I can share it with you if you want.
Let me get my pencil so we can dive in.
Yeah, so it's called the SASSY AI Framework for thought
Sassy.
leaders.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so the reason why it's sassy is because number one, you need to remember it, but you don't want your AI to be boring, right? You want it to have
Absolutely.
that energy to it. And so the first S stands for strategic. So when you're creating your whatever you're doing, when I worked with Chet Holmes, before we did anything, like wrote an email, picked up the phone, it was like, what is your strategic objective for what you're doing right now? Is it to establish expertise? Is it to put crushed objections before, like you were saying, like the person that hasn't done business with you in 10 years? Well, we want to crush those objections that you're more expensive than you were 10 years ago, right? So we would be strategic of like, okay, I'm going to establish how my expertise is higher than it was 10 years ago. I'm going to crush the objection that my rates are higher than they were 10 years ago. So we're getting very strategic. So we're putting that into what we're doing. Then we're going to look at A, which is authentic and attracts your perfect clients. So before you do anything with AI, you need to know, who are your perfect clients? What do they want? What do they love? What do they crave? What are they really struggling with? And I don't mean like, oh, they're stressed out, right? Or oh, they want to be successful. We don't want to use these like blah words. We want to use very specific words. Like, so for example, you might say, hey, you're an entrepreneur and your kid needs to go to soccer at 4 o'clock on a Thursday, and you still know that you have 4 hours more of work. So you're driving your kid to work and you're distracted, you're annoyed, you're losing that half hour, soccer time that you have driving your kid to connect with your kid because you're still grumpy and in your head about your business. Right. So we're talking in the language that's like, that's what they're thinking about at 2 o'clock in the morning. Like I was really mean to Bobby when we were driving to soccer, and I wasn't really paying attention what he was saying about how he had a fight with his friends at lunch. Right. And so we want to get into the mindset and be really authentic and attract those perfect clients. And then S stands for stories. So what are the stories? And I literally, my phone is over here. I literally grab my phone and I talk to my AI and I tell it stories. Like, for example, I had this guy that I met at the gym and he wanted me to come work with him. And I met with him a few times with his wife, and then they invited me to their house. And when we got to their house, it was the biggest house I've ever seen in my entire life. It had like 17 bedrooms and bathrooms and like 8-car garages, a helicopter pad. I walk up to the door, these two big Dobermans come to the door. Did I happen to mention he was Russian?
No.
And I was like, "Okay, maybe this is not the kind of Russian I want to be doing business with," right? Because he told me that he had done this international thing for his country, and I'm like, "Okay, maybe don't wanna go into the business with this guy," right? So that's an example of a story that now I can talk about with my perfect clients about how perfect clients don't just mean they have a lot of money. They have to be aligned with my integrity. They need to be aligned with what I want for my life, right? And so I can incorporate that story that AI is not going to have a story about this Russian oligarch to put into somebody's copy. So you need to think about that. Like when I'm out walking my dog, things pop up and I'm like, "Ooh, that's a good one." Like let's remind myself of that and capture that. And then the next S is for sell. And sell means that you want to have the call to action in what you're creating. And I don't mean like sell hard every single time. What I mean by that is you need to have that call to action. Like, what is the next thing that you want them to do? Like at the beginning of the podcast, you were like, make sure you like, sure you subscribe. So that's a call to action. It could be, watch this video. It could be, click here, but you want to have that selling and that call to action to move people along in the thing. And then the last thing in Sassy is you, right? So your own uniqueness. Like, what is it about you, Rick, that everybody that meets you is like, oh my gosh, Rick is amazing at that. Rick loves this. Rick has this dog that likes to sit and look out the window and bark, right? Like, what are those things? Like, we talked about that before the podcast. I'm going to remember that. Like, you have this dog that's like waiting for something to bark at, and so do I. So we've connected, right? And so you want to put the you into your AI. So that's the Sassy framework. And that's how I approach it much differently than anybody else out there.
So when you say put it into your AI, specifically does that mean? What are the outcomes, the outputs of that conversation or that
Well, it can be
process?
anything. It could be if you want to do a PowerPoint, for a webinar that you're doing, you want to get sassy beforehand and think like, what's the strategy? Who is the perfect client for this? Go through that whole method before you deploy that webinar script. And then before you deploy all the emails to drive people to the webinar, you want to be thinking, okay, like if I'm thinking strategically, what are the objections I'm crushing in the emails before people come to the webinar? We need the objections that are they don't have time to watch the webinar. It's going to be more of the same webinar. But then we also need the objections to crush that, like, am I going to get results with this that's going to help them buy from whatever you're selling in the webinar? So we would use this in every way. I've actually created my own app that I have for my mastermind members that actually has this whole framework baked into it so they can plug in their info. And what they do is they put in each product or service. And then each product or service, they look at, okay, who's the perfect client for that? And it builds out an avatar for that product or service. And then, the language and all of that, the sassy stuff for each product or service launch.
Said frankly, I mean, the models that we're using, everybody's using the same. A lot of people are using, basically, one of five models, I guess. And so the outputs outside of, some of the polishing that we're doing, I'm wondering how unique it really is, and how do we, and I'm asking from the perspective of being a user.
Hmm.
How do we make sure that what is being outputted, um, how do we make sure that it actually is good and is authentic? Because the fear that we should embrace at some point is that the tool isn't always accurate.
Yeah, it's crap in, crap out, right? And I think a lot of times what people do is they're like, AI, write me a blog post. AI,
Right.
write me an email, write me a this, right? And so they're being lazy AI users, really, quite frankly. And so if you're using that sassy framework, yes, it does take a little bit more time up front, right? To think and to be strategic. but your outputs are going to be way different. I've had people that are also certified AI consultants that, they've been learning how to do AI really well from the best people in the world. And they were blown away when they started doing Sassy. It transformed their content. Like people built their PowerPoints and their slides and all of that using this. And I think the difference is like we want to be really specific. So AI is really good at generalities. Like you're a 40 plus woman and you want to lose weight, right? So it's going to be like, oh, you want to get rid of your pouch, whatever. Like it's going to use the same language that everybody else because it's scraping the internet, right? And we want to get really clear of like what is our specific person complaining about, right? Like why do they want to lose weight? Well, they want to lose weight because they want to keep up with their kids when their kids go skiing, right? Or they want to, be able to kick the soccer ball with their kid after, work or whatever. But like get really, really specific. And then also the stories, because remember, nobody's going to have that Russian oligarch story that I had, right? So nobody else is going to have that content. So what are your stories? And literally get that microphone out and just like when I'm walking the dog or I'm driving, not while I'm driving, but I'll start the microphone before I drive and just talk and record things or sometimes I'll be in the middle of the night and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that's a really good thought, right? Or it's a really good idea. And I think you can use AI to work with your creativity. Like I'm a very creative person, even though I'm strategic. And I think I use those bursts of inspiration that I get that I used to just kind of go, because I didn't have time to implement.
Right.
Now I'm able to take those bursts of inspiration, take my phone and be like, hey, I have this really good idea. I save it and then I can go back and, put my sassy formula into it. But really take the time to figure out like, what's your strategic objective? Who do you want to talk to? What they want? What are the stories? I mean, the selling and call to action, people all do the same. And then what is the you that you want to integrate into your AI? Like what's important to you and what's important to the people that you work with?
Yeah. I love the you component because I mean, with everyone being online, et cetera, et cetera, I mean, it's really hard to truly differentiate. And so we really have to emphasize what's unique about us, as individuals, what we like, et cetera, because that's how we make those human connections. It forces us to really make more human to human connections.
Yeah.
Expressing ourselves through our brand as an extension
Yeah.
of our brand.
And I think it's interesting because I have some people that I coach and they're like doing their social media and they're like, oh, I'm comparing myself to other people. And I said, you know what? I said, I could really compare myself too, right? I could compare myself to those skinny blonde girls with the champagne and the high heels and the cute little suits or whatever. And like, really, that's not me. Like, if people know me, they know that I want to go sit on the lake. I don't drink. I will have a cup of tea wherever I go, but I drink it out of a mug because I'm not fancy, so I'm going to be me because when you come to my mastermind, like my mastermind I hosted at my house on the lake, and like, we'll be having flip-flops, okay? And I joke because I'm like, yeah, we're like at that orthotic flip-flop stage of like, I'm not wearing the stuff that doesn't have arch support. But like, that's just me. So like, be out there with who you are.
Yes, yes, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. I want to go into, I mean, the big question. How do you help people move from six figures to seven figures without extending their days? It's I will pause there and let you take
So
the
we
mic.
just have like 20 minutes left and tell me how to go from 6 to 7 figures. That's all. No, I love it. So I have an add a zero without the hustle framework that I follow that I've helped people go from 0 to 6 figures. I've helped people go from 6 to 7, and I've even helped a bunch of people go from 6 to 8 figures. And what I know is that we're using the same strategies the whole way through. And the difference is that you're coming at it from different places, right? So it keeps evolving. Like, for example, one of the things is going after your perfect clients. But your perfect clients when you're at, 100,000, and your perfect clients when you're at 500,000, when you're at 1.2, when you're at 10 million, they're all different, right? And so what we want to do is like really go through that add a zero without the hustle framework and implement it at the best you can at each level. And then you're going to come back to it at another level and do it again and get even better results. So I think one of the biggest crucial things in the program, first of all, is decide what you want, right? Like lifestyle design is an active part
Ok.
of the Add a Zero Without a Hustle method. Because if you don't know what you want, then you're just going to be all over the place and you're not going to get to where you want to go. Like if you want to get to $1 million, do you want to get to $1 million and still be able to, be home for supper? Do you want to, are you like, I don't know if you watched the Alex Hormozy interview with Tony Robbins a few months ago.
I didn't. I keep meaning to.
And he said he's suffering. He's suffering. He equates success with suffering. That's not my jam. Like, that is not me. Like, if you want to do like the sufferfest method of achievement, that is not what we're about. And so we want to get really clear of what we want and what's important to us. And then, things are going to expand to the time allotted, right? So then the next thing is that we have to be strategic. We have to have our strategic positioning dialed in of like who you are, why it's different than everybody else so that you become a one, going from what I call a commodity to a couture brand, right? Because if you're a commodity, like you can get it anywhere and any price, right? It's like nickel and diming people. So we want to do that. And then we want to start going after the best clients in the market, right? It's the same amount of work, right? So I have this pen here. This pen here is $1 billion pen. So this has a little suction cup. And so one of my clients, and it was literally in the book, The Ultimate Sales Machine, we put together his Dream 100 campaign and we went after the biggest, best clients for his company, right? Very specific, very narrow focus. And we started mailing them these lumpy mailers. And this little guy here, he went into an appointment with this guy at this $1 billion company. Now, my client at this point was like high six figures. And he said, "Why did you take an appointment with me?" And the guy grabs this thing and he shoves it down on the table. And he's like, "You kept sending me these things and it got my attention." And so the thing is that this client got this $1 billion client. And now, like 15 years later, he still has that $1 billion client. And it's like millions of dollars a year in revenue from one client. So it would have taken him the same amount of work to go get a client that was giving him $2,000 a month in business. Right. So I think part of it is like up leveling your mindset of like, hey, I'm an expert. I'm really good at what I do. Position yourself and then go after those dream clients that you want to work.
I'd love for you to go into, if you can, the psychology behind that level up. We have certain beliefs that we've created about who we can go after, et cetera, et cetera. That level up's a different it may not be a different conversation, but it's a different, mental positioning at the very least.
It is. And I think part of it is coming from owning your expertise. Right. And so I get really into it with my clients, like in their mindset of like, okay, what are you the expert at? What is your zone of genius? Right. As Gay Hendricks talks about, like getting in your zone of genius. And I think what happens is people come in their comfort zones and they do things that are in their zone of excellence, things that are easy for them, but they aren't just them that can do them. And so they get a little too cozy down there versus being like up here in your zone of genius. And I think you have to stop comparing yourself to everybody else. That's the other thing you have to do. Right. Because like I said, I could compare myself to these people on Instagram and be like, that's not me. I'm going to stay in my lane and do Stacey. And Stacey's going to attract her perfect clients. I'm not going to attract this person's perfect clients, And so that's really important. And think about, I have people put a win file together. And the reason why I had a client, he went from 6 to 8 figures when we were working together. The day he crossed to 8 figures, we had a coaching call. We're on the coaching call, we're talking about stuff and doing stuff. And then all of a sudden he's like, "Oh yeah, I hit 10 million today."
By the way,
Excuse me? You hit 10 million today and you didn't think you should lead with that? Right? And I'm like, that's why we always start with wins now when I do coaching calls. Because entrepreneurs, we're always looking at what's the next thing and where we are. And we're not looking at where we are now and where we used to be. Right? Because yesterday he was a multi six figure entrepreneur. Now he's an 8-figure entrepreneur. Right? And so we want to celebrate those things. So I keep a win folder so that you can start to see, these are all the wins I had. These are all the wins my clients had. And that gives you the courage to go after the bigger clients. The other thing in this specific instance for this client, is that we got really clear of how we could help our clients hit their goals. When you really dig into that perfect client of what's really stopping them from growing and what they want, right? And you can see like, okay, this is what they're struggling with. This is what they want. And I can help them get here and stop struggling with this. Then you could go after much bigger clients without as much fear because you know you can help them get the result.
How do you design what I heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is you didn't talk about your ICP in my mind. You talked about more of a buyer persona. Is that kind of you develop like that next level ideal customer?
Okay, so here's what I would say is like I'm not saying to go off and leave your perfect clients that you have right now that are the level that you're working with
Sure.
now. I'm not saying like throw them to the side. What I'm saying is you have those people, you keep them as a base, right? And then you look at, all right, what's that next level, right? Who are they? Like, and again, you're going to do the demographics, psychographics, like really fill out that ideal client persona. But then you're going to get really deep into like, what is their pain and what do they want? Like Tony Robbins, you're moving away from pain, you're moving towards pleasure. And it doesn't matter if I'm making 100,000, if I'm making 500,000, I'm making a million, I'm making 10 million. I want to move away from pain and move towards pleasure, right? So you need to figure out where you fit for your next level client of how they can move towards what they want, right? And then start marketing to those people. And like my client, as you said, like he has these $1 billion clients now, but he also has clients that are making 100 million. Right? And that's okay. Like he's still happy with the $100 million clients, right? So, but he's really looking at like marketing to them, month in, month out.
Right, right, right. My thinking was really around their fears and what keeps them up at night, et cetera. It's a different conversation between the different we'll call them levels. So how do you figure that out? What does that process look like?
Do you mean for how do you figure out what that client wants?
Yeah, at that next level client, what is that? How do we figure out
Some of
what the
it is going to
fears?
have to be testing, right? Because if
Yeah,
you're not talking to these next level clients, you don't know.
right, right,
Right.
right.
So part of it is going to have to be like putting yourself in the room with them of like attending conferences and places where they are, where they're talking about these things. Other things are, you have conversations with people and you see like, you know, oh, I'm curious. Like I always say, Columbo. Do you remember Columbo?
Yeah.
So I say
By the
like,
way,
yeah, yeah, Columbo and be like, I'm not sure, like, how do you deal with this? Like, oh, is this something you deal with? Like, is that something you're interested in? Like, you ask questions. You don't say like, "Oh, I know everything about you," and come at it from that way. If you don't know, like, ask questions, post some content, send some marketing out and see if it hits. Like when we did these mailers with the lumpy items for the Dream 100, it's not just sending a lumpy object. The lumpy object is tied into a theme. Right? So, but what are those themes for your next level client? Like, what is it that they want? And so you might have to play around with the themes and see what's resonating with them when you talk to them about it.
cool, cool. I want to jump real back to your note taking really quickly. You said you take notes. You said you use your phone. Are you using like an AI app on your phone, or are you just using the recorder itself when you come up
Oh,
with
well,
your ideas?
I've, I'm like, I'm a little bit of a geek, but not a technical geek at all. But what I do is I talk to my chat GPT using the microphone, right? And so I start a project
Yeah,
and then I talk in that project. The other thing I do is I use ChatGPT has the voice mode that you can talk to the person,
yeah,
right? So sometimes, like if I'm going on a car ride, I don't want to activate anybody on my phone, but if I'm on a car ride, I might start that mode before I leave so that I could be like, for example, I have a presentation coming up and I want to talk through my PowerPoint. So I might do the voice mode on my phone before I leave my driveway and then just talk through my ideas so that I'm capturing it. I use Fathom when I do any Zoom calls or anything because Fathom is going to record all of your conversation. I use that to help do proposals faster and easier.
yeah.
I've really helped a lot of my clients in like save like 10 hours a week, by how I use this little Plaud recorder. So this is a little AI recorder that like for example, if I'm training, like I'll do a VIP day with clients, I'll throw this in the middle of the conference room table. It'll record everything. And the reason why this is important is because I'm really helping my clients with their strategic positioning and talking through all of these things. And we might say something brilliant, and then like you try to say it again in the same way, like 10 seconds later, and you just can't get it to come out your mouth the same way. So this really, really helps with that. It also, if you're doing like a call, you can clip it onto the back of your phone and it'll record phone conversations according to Plaud, Plaud. When I showed this at my mastermind, everybody literally bought it on Amazon before I even shared the link. It was so funny. But like, check your legalities in your area of how you can record people and things. But I use all of those things because the more that you can get like exactly what people are saying when you're doing presentations, when you're doing proposals, all of those things, it really, really helps.
Yeah, yeah, good
And
stuff.
I also have my iPad with my with my Apple Pencil that I'm like jotting notes just because I find even though we have AI, I still want to use my brain. Right? And so I'm finding like by actually writing out what my clients are saying during our coaching calls, instead of just waiting for the recorder to tell me what they said and give me the highlights, it's sinking into my brain. I'm able to process it at a better level.
Yeah, I do that too. I find like there's dots that may not connect through the system. I love doing that. I love doing that. I have two questions, but we've got time for like one. I want to hear about your favorite client story if you can. I would love to hear that story where you brought someone perhaps from that frustration, like, "I've been at this plateau for, like, X number of years," and you brought them up to, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures.
Yeah, gosh, it's so hard. It's so hard to choose one. It's really hard to
No
choose one. I mean,
pressure at all.
like I had a client that was in my mastermind and she wanted to write an ebook. I'm like, "No, you're not writing an ebook. The world has enough ebooks." And she actually launched a best-selling book and a conference, and it's like a whole movement, and she's, like, inspiring women everywhere. Amazing. Like, the guy with the Disney thing, I mean, that was a long time ago, but it's still, like, it's such a core memory for me because he was, like, somebody like I said, he got his business on the Inc. 500, like, multiple times, very growth thing, but like, doing taekwondo with his son and taking their first Disney trip was, like, such an aha. It was insane. And then I have one other guy that he went to 8 figures, from 6 to 8 figures when we were working together, and he literally said, "I have a friend who has, like, a $100 million company," and he said, "I look at this friend, and he's miserable. He's lost his spouse, his kids hate him." He's like, "I'm at 8 figures." He's like, "I have like his daughter had a hard time, and he's like, "I took her off to, do some father-daughter time and spend the weekend with her." And like that was like a huge win because it was like my dad's thing, like my mission of giving entrepreneurs back to the family. That's where I see all of them. It's not about necessarily like hitting 7 or 8 figures. It's like doing it while having this life, right? Because now they're not gonna end up on their deathbed being like, "Oh, I wish I coulda helped my daughter when she was going through that really hard patch, but no, I had to go close some more deals." Right? No, he was able to take some time off, take the weekend, and really be focused with his kid.
I love the human side of entrepreneurship. It's like I don't want, I guess, with this podcast especially, I really want people to remember we're whole beings, we're not
Yeah.
just workers. It's like, yes, we might love to build the next thing, et cetera, but we have full lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. I'll use in air quotes, balance, but I mean there's nothing wrong with being a whole person while being an entrepreneur. So I
Yeah.
love the work.
Thank you. Yeah, and it is like entrepreneurship can be really addicting because you're getting this, feedback that's exciting, you're excited, you're jazzed up, and then it's like, "Oh, I have to go make dinner." Right?
I have that problem sometimes. Absolutely. Okay, last question. This is good. This is going to be a great question for you. So the name of the show obviously is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. And so for everyone, they can create winning in whatever way that they want to. They're going to define winning. The hard part sometimes is that relentless pursuit.
Mm,
What would you recommend to someone to ensure that, or to help them, or to guide them in being relentless in their pursuit of that win?
mm. I think I would say start with your why and what you want, because if you don't know what you want, and what your why is, then you're kind of doing all the things, but they're not leading towards momentum, if you know what I mean. They're just kind of like scattered. And I think if you get really focused on what you want and what you want to achieve, then all of your actions, they can be relentless, but they're all going in the same direction, which means you're going to get a lot more momentum and have it work.
Start with your why. That just pops up. You know what? Well, who was it that I don't remember who it was. I remember like many years ago, someone I was reading, just like, start with that why. That's
I think, is it
always
Simon
stuck.
Sinek that wrote that?
He said that, but I remember someone
Somebody else?
before that.
And it's such a hard thing for humans because we know what we don't want, but a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission to really think about what we do want. So it's really important to think about what you want.
Exactly. And if you have a why, you can overcome just about anything, right?
Yeah,
So that's I love that. Fantastic, fantastic. Stacey, anything you want to leave our audience with? How to get in touch with you and all
absolutely.
that?
So you can go to staceyhylen.com and you can take my Add a Zero Without the Hustle assessment there. But I think what would be really fun for your listeners is to go to moreclientsandcash.com, where I have my hidden profit system loaded in with a really cool AI tool that you can play with. And it'll actually show you 3 of the hidden profit strategies that you can do with your business. It'll suggest which one's the best one, help you implement it. Then it'll say, okay, you ready for the next one? And it'll take you through that. So if you go to moreclientsandcash.com, you can do that. Or you can follow me anywhere on Instagram. If you go to my Instagram and just type more on any of my posts, it'll give you that More Clients and Cash also.
Fantastic. We're going to put that on your show notes too, so everybody will have access to that. That's amazing. That's an amazing tool. I gotta check that out myself.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been delightful and inspiring. I appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun. You asked so many good, juicy questions. And remember, everybody listening, don't just learn, go off and actually implement.
There you go. Go out and implement. That's the key. That's the key right there. And folks, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.